Hi, this is Maheen, and today we are launching our global food panel, and I'm really excited about our guests today. We have Kiran Alvi, who is a Chop Junior runner-up, and she was in 2019 show. It's a really popular show on Food Network. And we have Isam Hadami, who is an aspiring chef, and he's studying food and hospitality in Spain. And he's joining us from Karachi, and Kiran's joining us from St. Louis Park in Minnesota. What brings them together with me, our love of dance. We both have danced on separate occasions in weddings and stuff, so they're really good dancers too. Another interesting aspect about this panel is that they're both biracial. So Isam is a Filipino and Pakistani, and Kiran is white and Pakistani. And I think that kind of reflects in their food influences as well. We also have Austin Caldwell, who is the MTG team. He covers beats of music and fashion. And we have Tessa Hoyos, who covers business, fashion, and wellness. And they both are foodies too, along with me. I love cooking and traveling and eating good food. So this is going to be a fun one, guys. So Kiran, I can start with you. What are your food influences? And did Chopped have anything to do with like the way you cook and all that kind of fun stuff?
A lot of influences on my food are my dad's cooking because it's very Pakistani and I get to learn from different flavors that he grew up with. And then also my mom, even though she can't really cook, she like she doesn't really always want Pakistani food. So sometimes changing Pakistani food up for her helps me make cool, interesting things. And then I feel like after Chopped, I cook food like way faster because I like taught myself before we did Chopped how to cook like super fast, obviously. So I cook pretty fast now, and I like to experiment with different flavors because on Chopped you get like a bunch of random things. So having I can now like make something out of a bunch of random stuff, which I think is pretty cool.
Nice. Well, I was, obsessed with Chopped when I first moved to like America, and I was like looking for jobs. I would watch Chopped every day and time myself in the kitchen. So I can understand like cooking fast is actually pretty efficient. Sam, I'll come to you now. Tell us about your food influences, and if your mom's like baking, and she's a brilliant baker, she makes amazing food. Did that have to do with some of the influences? And your dad is a restaurateur. He owned a couple of restaurants in Karachi. So just how did that reflect your baking and cooking?
Yeah, so I'll say I'm pretty lucky in that aspect where I have a mom. I mean, obviously being biracial, having a mom who's a great cook, firstly, and Filipino, and then having my dad who doesn't really cook, but obviously being exposed to my grandmother's cooking, having that, growing up with that as a childhood, I was extremely lucky. So I'd say in terms of food influences, it has been my grandmother and my mother as well, but even though my dad doesn't really cook, I'd say he's been just as big as an influence, or not an influence, but maybe well, I'd say an influence, yeah, because he has a really sharp palate. He's been able to, he's able to like identify flavors. A lot of stuff that growing up I didn't really appreciate, and looking back now, he's like it was actually quite amazing. And on top of that, he is my strongest critic. So
Yeah.
having that in the house has definitely helped. Yeah.
Nice. So my team here has a couple of questions for you both based on like our meeting a few days ago. So Austin, can you go ahead and ask your questions to Kiran and Assam, please?
Yeah. My first question is for Kieran. What would you say like your signature dish is?
I really like. It's not very Pakistani, but I really like to make like a sriracha soy um, like marinade, and I make that, and I put it literally in any fish, or you can make like Asian meatballs with it, and then I do a side of a cucumber, tomato, onion salad, and I make that probably like 3 times a week.
That's,
So
that
Yeah.
sounds amazing. Wow. That's like way more complex than like, sweet and sour meatballs and stuff like that. So, yeah. Question for Assam. How would you recommend newer chefs, newer people to cooking start trying to experiment?
Okay, well, are you speaking for yourself?
Myself or anybody who's starting out with just cooking from home, especially.
Okay. Well, I can tell you about my own personal experience having like because I didn't cook much growing up. So when I first started getting into cooking, it was mainly due to nostalgia, I guess. Being in university, eating, takeout pizza and burgers, wings every single day. I missed my mother's cooking. I missed her chicken adobo, if you guys know what that is, signature Filipino dish. Yeah.
I've had it. It's
So,
delicious.
yeah.
Ooh.
So what I'd recommend is think of a dish that takes you back to your childhood. Think of a dish that brings back those memories. Something that gets you excited to cook that, and go f- go try to make that first.
I love that. I love that. Um, for me, it's like the suji ka halwa that my grandmother made, and every time I make it, it just reminds me of like how I learned it when I was like 9 from her. It's a really simple recipe, but it takes me back there. Tessa, you had questions for our food panelists as well?
Yes, so I have a question for Kieran first. How do you decide what to do when you get all of those wild ingredients on Chopped?
I think sorry. Going like tracing where like the food is like would be if it wasn't like chemicalized or whatever. So like ketchup is basically just tomatoes. So I just like it's and then chopped one of the ingredients I got was ketchup soda. So
Oh my.
I went back and I was like, so it would have some tomatoey flavors. So if you get a bunch of different ingredients, just like trying to think about what they would go well with if they were just like purely like vegetables or just meat or whatever helps you try and think of things that would work with it, even if it's not exactly the same thing you're thinking it might be.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And a question for Isam, what is your signature dish?
Well, I'd say my signature dish has got to be my kebabs. Well, because I mean, I'd say they're not really region specific. I've kind of added stuff to them which they don't, which not necessarily Middle Eastern anymore. But I'd say originally Turkish, but now they're a mix of Turkish and Asian kebabs.
Nice. This conversation is making me hungry. All right, cool. So I want to talk about the food from the regions you guys are from, your hometowns, right? So Kiran, I can ask you, what's St. Louis Park, Minnesota food like? What's the food culture there?
Um, very bland. In the Midwest, I feel like family food is like and casseroles. So a lot of the food that people make in the Midwest is very like it's. I mean, personally, I think it's very bland. So yeah, it's very bland, and
Okay,
it's a lot of the flavors are just salt and pepper and cheese.
got it.
You know,
Got it.
because it's the Midwest.
Yeah. Isam, what about Karachi? I'm missing Karachi food so much right now. Like when I crave something, I literally cook it. I was craving like curry pakora like last week, and I was like, okay, I have to make it. Like because you can't find it anywhere in Seattle. So in Seattle, the biggest problem here is that you just have Indian food, and that's also bland. Like Kiran, you said over there, it's like kind of bland, and you don't get actual authentic Pakistani food. So what would you say is the Karachi palate like?
Well, I mean, you would know just as well as I do, having grown up here. But
Yeah.
I mean, the food scene over here is it's fantastic. I mean, I really don't know how else to describe it. It's such a it's a street food culture, where you can go around and you can find like 100 different things for less than $1, and you can just walk around, be surrounded by the lights and the sounds of the city, and just fill up on different kinds of street food. We have bun kebabs. If you guys, obviously Mahin knows about it, but they're like it's a Pakistani burger, which is kind of made with like it's like lentils, a lentil patty, sometimes it has chicken or beef mixed in as well with the different types of like chutneys on top of that, and lots of butter. Obviously, butter
Yeah.
makes it better. So, and in addition to that, lots of fried foods. So, I mean, that's mainly the staples over here. You won't find too many salads on the streets.
Right.
Yeah.
What I love about like the Karachi food scene and generally in Pakistan is that you have these two like different categories. One is like the street food that Isam is talking about, but then you also have this high-end dining. Like you can go and have really good like sushi and Thai food, which is like high dining, you know, like the ones that you go over here in America. It's pretty incredible and cheaper. So that's a good little thing that bait that I have for both Austin and Tessa to kind of go to Pakistan and have cheap high-end food. And there's a lot of flavors in there. All right, so I wanted to kind of talk about the food that you guys enjoy eating the most. I mean, you know, like in Chopped, for instance, Kiran, you were just like told to make ingredients, like Tessa said, with this like tricky ingredient, which is always nasty, this one ingredient, and they just have to work with it. But what is that favorite food that you crave and you really want to make and eat, Kiran?
Um, well, okay. I really like food with strong flavors. Like I like food that like you eat and you can tell everything in there, but there's also a lot of complex flavors. So sometimes that means like, I mean, I'm always craving Chipotle, but sometimes that means making like a really fancy pasta or making like a super like making some sort of kebab that has more than what it would normally have. So I think for me it really does depend, but I'm always in the mood for cooking something that that's not the easiest to make, which I think a lot of people find weird about me because it's like, who likes to cook hard things? Nobody. But it feels like it's like a challenge, and I'm always up for food that was a challenge to make.
Yeah, and I just absolutely love browsing through your Instagram or stalking through your Instagram. I mean, all the food that you've been eating, I love that you're exposing your palate to so many things. And as a chef, it's a treat because you're like, oh, I know what this is. This is made of this, and then you go at home and try to experiment, try to make the exact same thing. All right, Isam, I wanted to talk to you about Spain. So you've been to Spain and you're learning cooking over there and kind of taking it to the next professional level. I love Spain. I've been to Madrid a few times and Barcelona. I love the tapas there and the croquetas. And I just love the way they serve things. And, you know, they fill you up with those tiny little plates, you know, the tapas. So talk about Spain, Spanish food, and why Spain?
Well, why Spain? Well, two reasons. Mainly the school that I picked was affiliated with one of my favorite chefs and maybe the most famous chef in the world, Ferran Adria. And because the school was affiliated with him, I knew there was a certain standard of education over there. So that's why I chose the school. Why I chose Spain would maybe kind of a simplistic answer, but I just love the language. I've been learning Spanish. I mean, on and off for about 6 months to a year now, and I don't know. It's something, you know, when you just feel a connection. I felt a pull from Spain, and I decided, hey, why not? I'm gonna go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So I want to ask Kiran, like, what's her like next step and next goal? Like you did Chopped Junior. Do you want to go on Chopped again, or do you want to go for Master Chef? Like, what's your plan?
Yeah, so I said I told you this earlier, but I wanted to take a break from, you know, like competition and stuff, mostly because it took away from school because I had to be focusing on that more than my grades. And you can actually tell, like, when I started the whole chopped thing and when it ended, you can see my grades switch, which honestly is kind of funny. I mean, not that much, but you know. So I wanted to take a break before it got like really bad, especially if I did more longer shows like MasterChef, where I would be there probably a while. So I'm still kind of on that break because honestly, I'm procrastinating signing up for something else. But I think I also wanted to take a break to, you know, get better in cooking because obviously you can always improve on something. So I think for me, my next step is to just be a better chef and find things that I think are um, interesting and exciting
Nice.
as a chef.
Got it. So who's your favorite chopped chef? Sorry, chopped judge.
Um, Either Alex Garnicelli or Jeffrey Zakarian. I think the thing with Alex is she's like super down to earth. Like you can tell she's just a really good chef who like knows how to cook, obviously. And I actually did. My mom had a opportunity with her like work to do a live stream with Alex, and she taught you how to cook something. It was like chicken cacciatore, I think. So when she was doing that, you could really tell she enjoys cooking. She enjoys teaching people to cook, and I think her as a judge, you can see that. And then also with Jeffrey, he just seems like so like he just seems like such a good judge. Like he knows food and he knows how to do food right. So he's just really good at judging food.
Got it. Yeah. Cool. I mean, it's so awesome that you got to like be part of this. And I was watching your thing as soon as it came out. I was in Pakistan at the time when your chopped episode came out. And so your dad shared it with me on YouTube. And then that's when I did the article on you. And I tweeted about it. And I think it was Alex who actually liked it or retweeted it or something. I was like, ah,
Oh
she's like,
yeah.
amazing. I think I told your dad about it. But cool. So let me tell you guys about Seattle food. So let me ask you guys first. What's your assumption? What do you think the Seattle food scene is like? Isam, any clues or guesses?
I don't want to be too harsh on Seattle, but
Go for it.
well, judging by your responses, I would say it's nothing too diverse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Kiran, I'll ask Kiran first and then I'll respond.
I think it's kind of a big city. It's one of like those cities that like you can name and people know where it is. So I think there you can find diverse foods, but I feel like a lot of the food there is going to be like fried food and like not as bland as the Midwest, but not super not like you could find in Miami or New York. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting. So Seattle food is very heavily influenced by the Asian culture. So we have a lot of Vietnamese places, we have a lot of Thai places, Japanese food places. It's pretty diverse. Only that it's not diverse in Pakistani food, unfortunately. But you find all kinds of food here, and some really good chefs have kind of invested. Tom Douglas being one of them, who has a huge restaurant chain, and he's a huge restaurateur. However, the pandemic has really changed things. Lots of restaurants, it's pretty much all over the world, have closed down, along with some of our favorite restaurants in Seattle, which is really unfortunate. So I don't know how the restaurant scene is really going to look post pandemic. What do you guys think as people, as kids pursuing chef degrees? I'm sure the current situation is making you guys nervous, right, Assam?
Without a doubt. I think in terms of the restaurant scene, it's probably the worst it's ever been at the moment. But I mean, in my own personal opinion, I feel like things will eventually return to normal. Well, the new normal, not
Right.
the way it was before. But yeah, it's definitely a tough time for all restaurants out there. And I mean, you see, even Michelin star restaurants, they're doing like takeaway or like meals, or
Yeah.
delivery meals at home, So I guess everyone's trying to figure out what's going to work for them in the future. And I don't think everyone has this yet. We're still seeing how this is all going to play out. But I am optimistic.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. There are lots of takeouts, and that's like the new thing. That's what the shift is now. Kiran, what would you say about that?
Here in Minnesota, a lot of restaurants are doing 50% capacity and outdoor food. And I think people are now realizing because of the shutdown that they don't ever have to leave their houses to get the things they need,
Yeah.
even with restaurants. So I feel like there will be a lot of takeout and a lot of delivery foods, especially because there's so many apps like Uber Eats and Bite Squad, Bite Squad and DoorDash. It's very easy for people to get food delivered. And you always kind of want that like restaurant experience, but I feel like a lot of people, until there is a vaccine for corona, I feel like
Right.
a lot of people are gonna stick with delivery and takeout until they actually go to restaurants, which might really hurt chefs and their money and what they're putting their money into, and they have to rework all that. So I think it's definitely going to change.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you bring up a really interesting point. I mean, yeah, I do notice that some restaurants have opened at 50% capacity or 40%. We went to this Salish Lodge, which is a little north. It's this beautiful lodge, and they had restaurants and stuff. We're like, oh, we'll be eating, we'll be just doing room service. But no, we were actually eating there, and they were very, very, very responsible. They serve with their masks on and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little strange, but let's see what happens. I wanted to ask these guys, Austin and Tessa, about the Bellingham food scene. So they're from the city called Bellingham. Austin, I'll have you go first. What do you love to eat there?
I was ready for this question. Oh man. Well, I can start kind of in a timeline. Well, yesterday I got some Salvadorian food from a truck that's outside of the big studio that's in town, and it's called Super Mario's, and they've got like everything under the sun that you can imagine, and it's so savory. It's like it's slightly different from traditional like Mexican food or like Catalonian food or anything like that, because it's just I don't know what the specific spices are that make everything mesh together so well, but it's primarily like rice, cabbage, and vegetables, stuff like that, put into wraps.
Mhm.
There's a lot of Thai food, lots of Thai food
Yeah.
for sure, and surprising amount of poke. So poke is like essentially,
Okay.
well, I'm sure y'all are very aware, but for anybody watching this later on, poke is like essentially like a sushi salad, you know, very,
Yeah.
very Polynesian, just like everything's like spread out into a big bowl and you get to choose your sauces and everything that goes on top of it. And I think that's like a recent addition. Just in the past few years, they started putting in more poke places.
Yeah. Definitely more in Fremont as well, the neighborhood that I'm in. Tessa?
I'm actually going to have to disagree with you. I don't think the Bellingham food scene is very diverse. In my experience, I've been to restaurants that aren't great, but there are a couple of places downtown that are really good. We have a crepe place. There's like a new fried chicken place and a couple of burrito places. But yeah, you're right. There's Thai food as well. And luckily, I live right next to a pho place, and pho is one of my favorite foods.
That's amazing.
So we have a punch card that we use
Oh, no.
quite frequently.
Okay,
What,
you're really into it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
what is that Pho 99?
Oh
Or
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I just got that the other day. So
Like the food also is pretty much in Seattle, it's like it relates to the weather. So, it's like pretty cold here and mild and cloudy all the time. So pho, everyone loves. It's kind of soupy. So you just like to indulge in it. I love it. My husband hates it because I'm a slow eater. So when I'm having pho, he's like, tick, tock, tick, like when will this end, But I like it. All right, that's
oh,
our timer to say bye. Well, thank
goodness.
you so much, guys. This was incredible. I'm sure this is going to be a start of many great food panels that we're going to have. The idea and intent really is to get all the foodies together, have a spot for them to network and get to know each other and learn from one another. Thanks so much for your time. It was an honor having you guys on.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Mike.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Have a good one.